Donald Trump's much anticipated tariff bombshell is here, and it's hitting India along with a host of other countries. 26% said Trump's own announcement. The fine print talks about 27%. Donald Trump once again described Prime Minister Modi to be his great friend, quote unquote, but then added a series of caveats to why he needed to slap India with this 26 or 27% tariff rate. I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo Story. On the program today, that is the image of Donald Trump announcing his new tariff Raj to the world. India has been slapped with a 26% tariff rate, though the fine print reveals the number to actually be 27%. Notwithstanding the bonhomie and the hugs experienced recently between the two men you see on your screen in Washington, Trump acknowledged that Modi was a great friend, but continued to argue that India had been extremely unfair, and this was actually what Trump calls a reciprocal tariff. There is geopolitics here, there is economics, and there is also domestic politics. Rahul Gandhi targeted as the opposition leader the government and demanded an explanation for what this tariff Raj means for Indian interests. Remember, Minister Piyush Goyal was in DC to try and negotiate a better deal, but clearly that deal did not really work out. So domestic politics, geopolitics, the impact on the economy, but also some humorous moments, because when it's Donald Trump, how can you expect any different? Tariffs were also slapped on islands that have no human population, only penguins. Unfortunately, India has no such luck. We have more than 1 billion people who are waiting to see what this tariff Raj means for the economy, but also what this means for Indo-US relations. Let me introduce our very distinguished panel today, a panel of experts as we look at all of these implications, wide-ranging implications. Padma Rao is with us, veteran journalist who spent decades pounding the pavement when it comes to foreign policy. Welcome, Padma, to the program. Also joining us is Ambassador Dr. Mohan Kumar, an academic and a veteran diplomat. Always a pleasure to see you after ages, sir. Welcome back to the program. John Lakshmi is here with us from the United States of America. He's a finance professional, but also a member of the South Asian Journalists Association board based out of the US. Good to see you, John. And also joining me is a man who knows a thing or two and then some about what the economics of all of this means. Former finance secretary, the author of two very successful books, Subhash Garg. Welcome everybody to the program. Let me get started with what Trump said about India. He had a lot to say about the world, but this is what he said about our country. Take a look.
India, very, very tough. Very, very tough. The prime minister just left. He's a great friend of mine, but I said, you're a friend of mine, but you're not treating us right. They charge us 52%. You have to understand, we charge them almost nothing for years and years and decades. And it was only 7 years ago when I came in, we started with China and charged them. We took in hundreds of billions of dollars from China in tariffs. And they understood, honestly. President Xi understood. He said, look, I understand. And the other countries, and they all understand. We're going to have to go through a little tough love, maybe. But they all understand. They're ripping us off, and they understood it.
Right. So they're ripping us off. Modi's my great friend, but we've heard this script before. Ambassador Kumar, the point is that there were attempts to negotiate behind the scenes, and those attempts may still be ongoing. The only official word from the government right now is we're assessing this, we're studying it. India did better in terms of market response than much of the world, many of the countries that are hit by this. What's your first take? Looked at this through diplomacy. Trump has said it's coming. It's come. With Trump, what he says you get. He doesn't just say it for the heck of it. That's quite clear even with his domestic policy prescriptions. How do you react? Your first reaction, Ambassador Kumar?
So thank you very much for having me. I think my first response is that it could have been a lot worse. So I tend to think that we've been treated better than many countries in Asia. Second point I would like to make is, for me, it is not irreversible. We are in the middle of negotiations, and I would like to believe that at least some, if not all of these things can be reversed. And the third thing that I would like to say is, very frankly, and I'm sticking my neck out, Barkha, India needs tough love. We have been acting protectionist for a while, and we are great reformers only out of compulsion, not out of conviction. If somebody forces us to reform, I am thrilled with it. So maybe we should convert the crisis into an opportunity and do the kind of reforms which should have been done long back. Thank you.
So, Ambassador, tough love is the exact phrase that actually Donald Trump used. And you're actually saying, A, this is not the final number necessarily, and B, this is not bad. This is not all bad.
Yes, I'm saying absolutely the same thing that you just said. I think we need to look at this as an opportunity. We are negotiating, so it's fine. I understand why our response is it's a mixed bag. We are still evaluating, we are still assessing. That gives me an indication that we are still talking to the Americans, which is good. I also think, by the way, I don't share the jingoism of a lot of people who say we should retaliate immediately, because then you're getting yourself into a slippery slope. He will double the tariffs, and then what do you do? So we will get into details a little later. I'm sure, there's some sectors are going to be hit. I have no doubt about it, but we will talk about it. But when I look at what has happened to Vietnam, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka, I cannot but feel relieved.
That's a good point, Subhash Garg. Trump held up these images where the different tariff rates for all the different countries as it applied was revealed to the world. The Senate did manage to block for his tariffs against Canada, for example, right? But Ambassador Mohan Kumar is correct in pointing out that when it comes to other countries, he named Vietnam, he named Bangladesh in particular, we haven't done badly. But is there something that would concern you immediately for India's economic interests?
Number one, these are not reciprocal tariffs. These are something different. The way they have worked out is, in my judgment, very simple. Divide the Americans' trade deficit by the imports, and the resultant number is what will give you the number, and half of that is what they have imposed as tariff. So there is no favor to India or disfavor to Vietnam or anyone. Vietnam exports much more, import is much less, and therefore they've been slapped with, there is a difference of 92% that ratio comes to, and therefore 46 works out. So I don't think anybody should believe that he has been favorable to anyone. It's not case of India. It's favorable to anyone.
But you said something very important, and there's a lot of commentary on this even on social media. Trump claimed that these would be reciprocal tariffs, that these were being reciprocated by America to countries who did not have a fair tariff regime towards the United States. You are saying these are not reciprocal tariffs. They've just been calculated on the back of an envelope, given trade imbalance.
Just look at Vietnam, for example. The tariff for American goods is 7.5%. They have been imposed 46%. China is again about 5 to 7%. China has been imposed that high. So it has no relation whatsoever with what the tariff American goods are subjected in those respective countries. It is the trade imbalance, trade deficit America has. And by imposing these hypothetical, these are not tariffs, these are penalties. The American administration, Trump is trying to correct the economic order of the world, the manufacturing system of the world, that tomorrow on the thread of this, Vietnam or India or China for that matter will import as much as the deficit is today from America. America has nothing to export of that, though it is about 16% of the global manufacturing. But that import is much higher, so 28, 29% or 30%. And therefore, I don't think this will work. What it will work is, without being said, what is actually happening is that in this global economic order, post-World War II, the developing countries, both the least developed countries as well as the developing countries, were given very high preferential tariffs. They were not industrialized. The Americans and Europeans were industrialized. And over the years, last 50 years or so, They have also become industrialized. Today, 60% of the global manufacturing takes place in what we call developing countries. And therefore, those preferential tariffs, which were there for last 30, 40 years, 50 years, are not required. And the countries are, I heard today that Vietnam has said, we'll make your tariff zero on everything, right? So, tariff is not the issue. He's trying to change the economics, manufacturing.
So this is a really important point. And before I come to John and Padma, Ambassador Dr. Mohan Kumar, you said it, it's welcome, it'll force us to reform. But I think Subhash Garg makes a really critical point that what Trump has done is he's looked at the US trade numbers, and wherever there's a trade imbalance, he's actually calculated the percentage based on that imbalance. And therefore, this whole talk about reciprocal tariffs doesn't quite apply. So he's done us no favors here. Even though some other countries may be worse off, this is not because of any special relationship or love for India.
No, on that point, I agree with Mr. Garg. You can call it what you like. It's not reciprocal. I concede that point. But tariffs are meant to actually lead to security and predictability of trade. We have been playing havoc with tariffs. Every budget, you increase it, you decrease it, you put additional duties and so on. So my point is, I'm not here to defend what Mr. Trump has done. He has done what he has done, and I believe in many ways it is actually strikes at the root of the MFN system. I spent 10 years in Geneva negotiating at the WTO, and I see that, this is the last nail in the coffin, frankly, as far as the multilateral trading system is concerned. But I am looking at it from a purely pragmatic and geopolitical point of view. He has talked of India. Please look at the fact sheet of the White House. It talks not just of tariffs, but it talks of non-tariff barriers by India when it comes to telecom equipment, when it comes to medical devices, routers, switches. And he also says that if countries can actually meet the security considerations of the United States, then I'm happy to do something. The fact of the matter is, Barkha, we are now a close partner of the United States, whether we like it or not, for a variety of reasons, and we can talk about that, but I'm just saying that is the reality. This is a relationship that is arguably the most consequential relationship for India. I am not at all getting into the merits of it, but I am thinking the government of India is doing the right thing by not going jingoist on this, by saying we are going to retaliate and so on. I think you quietly negotiate with the Americans, try and see what deal you can get. In fact, there could be an opportunity or two, frankly, for your textiles and garments, for your electronic products and so on. Agriculture, I worry about a little, including shrimps. I worry about the small and medium enterprises of India. But those are things that, the country and the government has to deal with. But we are not here to defend whether this is in conformity with WTO. He is playing havoc with the MFN system. That we know. And that's a fact. But it is what it is. So I think from an Indian perspective, I'm trying to see how we can handle this, frankly.
Now, you use the word partner. You said this is one of the most consequential partnerships, and that would be technically the correct nomenclature. The leader of the opposition in Parliament, Rahul Gandhi, used the word ally, which is technically incorrect. India is not an ally of any country. But he did use Trump's tariffs to sort of poke at the government. So there is domestic politics playing out here as well. Just before I come to John and Padma, let's take a look at what Rahul Gandhi said on Trump's tariffs.
Indira Gandhi ji, in the matter of foreign policy, do you lean left or do you lean right? And Indira Gandhi ji answered, I don't lean left or right, I stand straight. I'm Indian and I stand straight. And the BJP and the RSS have a different philosophy. When asked, do you lean left or do you lean right? They say, no, we bow our head right in front of every foreigner that comes in front of us. Sir, this is something that is in their culture, it is in their history, we know that. But we would like an answer from the government of India. What are you doing about our land? And what are you going to do? What are you going to do about this tariff that are ally has imposed on us. Thank you.
What are you going to do about this tariff that our ally has imposed on us? We are not an ally of the United States of America. We are not a member of any military alliance. And no matter which government comes and goes, I would even stick my neck out here and say, I don't see India's foreign policy being upended in that manner. That said, Padma, he's right, or he's within rights to ask, what's the plan? And all we have in terms of the plan is a very anodyne, cautious press release from the government saying we're assessing it. Ambassador Kumar says, correct to not go jingoistic. Subhash Garg says, hang on, these aren't even reciprocal tariffs. He's doing you no favor. He can hug you. He can call you his best friend. But this is all about American interests. Transactionalism max.
Thank you, Barkha. I think, just to briefly mention Rahul Gandhi, I don't think there was ever a more protectionist government than his grandmother's government. And, I'm a child of the 60s, and the early years of this disastrous flirtation with socialist democracy, or rather socialism, with the Soviet Union as a very close ally, that was disastrous, and we lost decades of industrial development, which only more or less began after Dr. Manmohan Singh brought in reforms. So I would like, except for heavy industry, perhaps you may argue, but I'd like to come at this as a consumer and as a foreign correspondent, really. And and I completely agree with what Ambassador Kumar says, as in layman terms, as an Indian taxpayer, as an Indian middle class professional taxpayer who pays very high taxes. I've not seen any remarkable improvement in the quality of any kind of services, infrastructural or products received in return. So I see these tariffs as an opportunity, both for the government of India, no matter of which political hue, to reshape many of the its policies, which have been hurting the rapidly growing Indian middle class and professional class, but also India's industry, which has for long suffered, most of all, Barkha, from falling short in comparisons to imported products, and the majority of consumers in India will agree with me. Now, as an observer of multilateral relations, I can't speak of tariffs really in economic terms or in terms of bilateral trade, because that's not my subject. But I can try and address the question as to whether these moves are linked to political, geostrategic, or diplomatic relations.
And that is my question to you, Padma.
Yes,
That
yes.
we are not, other than Mr. Garg and Ambassador Kumar, and even John, who brings in a financial expertise.
Yeah.
That's not your and my area, but we do look at
Yes.
geopolitics.
Yes.
And when we try and understand the impact of Trump, look, Europe is
Yes.
ablaze
Yes.
with debate. Markets are tanking around the world. Our markets are kind of okay compared to other countries, right?
So
So
I'm glad
you've
you
got to,
touched.
yeah, go ahead.
I'm glad you touched upon markets, because that would have been the point I'm trying to make. Now one can ask, are these US tariffs fair? Are any tariffs fair if one country is bigger, stronger, richer than the other, right? And one could ask, is it fair that that this is an economic superpower, that it demands any kind of tariff parity or even near parity vis-a-vis an emerging power like India, right? Now, but just since Mr. Garg mentioned Vietnam, I'd like to mention Cambodia. Now, on this list which was released by the IMF and the White House, India's per capita income is $2,950, right? And that of the US is $89,680. Now, India's is more or less on par with that of Cambodia, which is $2,960. And that is a country with whom the US trade deficit is much lower than what it is with us. It's only $12.3 million.
Yeah.
Now, it may sound skewered to an economist, but a layman at this point will ask, why is then the tariff imposed on India at 26% and that on Cambodia at 49%? Now, there are two reasons. One, obviously, and this is where the geostrategy comes in, and pure marketing also. Cambodia imposes higher tariffs on US goods than India does, and the US president's tariffs are based, as Mr. Garg says, on 50% of that amount, right? Another obvious reason is that US obviously wants to sell its products to India. It's India and not Cambodia, which is poised to be the world's third largest consumer market in 2027. Now, since our average per capita income is unlikely to shoot up within barely 2 years, obviously the US will want to sell goods that are affordable for most Indians. Now, the question, fairness, No, Trump is a businessman. There is no fairness in trade and business anyway. And we have to remember that he views international relations through the same prism. Of course, now this will mean, as Ambassador Kumar says, that Indian companies will have to bend over backwards to match quality, to match other parameters of US goods and perhaps others who may impose sanctions along the way to remain competitive. And this will mean that many items being imported more cheaply from other countries right now may also dwindle in
But
sales because
but
US
let's pick up
economies become, yeah.
yeah,
So
let me bring
I
in
think
John. Let me bring in John on this point that you made. It's a great quote. Trump is a businessman first and foremost, right? That's how he's going to run the White House. That's how he's going to run domestic politics. Even the whole Elon Musk cut government spending, shutting down things. It's all coming through the lens of a businessman. How do I save money? How do I make America richer? That's the record. I want to end wars also, not from any point of principle or ideology. I want this country to be rich and therefore great again. John, your take.
Well, thank you, Barkha. First of all, I think we are doing a lot of mind reading and characterizations that are totally flawed, in my opinion. You started the show by calling it a bombshell, slap in people's faces. None of it is really true. India and other countries do business with America. America does business with India. And in business or anything else, and a very important thing for us to do is KYC. Know your client. India must know America as a client. To do that, all Indians who are involved in this discussion, debate, should first read a book called No Trade is Free by Robert Lighthizer. I've mentioned this book to people and they get turned off. They said, I'm not going to read it. Some people said, you must read the book. It's well written. It has very good arguments, charts, and show what the issues are. And then you should also know American history. American history, for the 250 years old country, for 2/3 of its history, we had only tariffs. We had no income tax. Tariffs were one of the main sources of our revenue, and tariffs were used to protect American industry and nurture them. The steel industry and others were able to grow. Cotton, tobacco, everything grew because tariffs were an important tool. We gave it up, and then when after the war, America did not become rich by industrializing. America built its own domestic economy by, first of all, the FDR's programs. We built America, and then during the Eisenhower term, we built the interstate highways, made the national economy into a very large economy, and then we built housing, a very big sector. It's about 10% of our economy. So industrialization is not the main thing here. It's growing one's domestic economy. India should not worry at all about these issues because India's dependence on American exports, not the services exports, which India is doing very well in, IT services and so forth. Industrial exports to America is very, very small. And if it becomes more expensive, India's economy is not going to be affected. India's economy is going to be affected by what India does to 500 million people who are looking for jobs. And India can follow the American model. India must rebuild itself. Infrastructure building is not about building fancy airports. You must build if I travel to India frequently, the highways are fine. But after you go away from the highways, the local roads are terrible.
But here's my question to you. Sorry to butt in there, but here's my question, briefly, if you will, because I want to go around the panel again. Are you saying, given the history of the United States of America when it comes to tariffs, Trump hasn't actually broken the mold? And if he hasn't, what explains the exemption, for example, for a country like Canada, where he was, he keeps provoking them. He seemed, at least at the age of Trudeau, out to wreck that relationship.
Well, are you examining this from America's point of view or India's point of view?
I will always examine it from an Indian perspective, of course.
India should not care about what America does to Canada, Cambodia, Vietnam, or any of those other countries. India's strategic relationship with America should be based on the fact that we are a very large importer of your IT services. You have earned over $3 trillion of foreign exchange reserves, largely as a result of exports of jewelry, gems, and IT services. We get a lot of students here. who do research. That's very important for you,
Yeah.
right? Those are the ones that India should.
So this is an interesting point, John, because you're actually saying it's actually a non-issue, or it could be a non-issue. Shore up your own economy, and who cares what Trump is doing with the rest of the world? Let me bring in Subhash Garg first.
I just want
Sorry.
to make one more point. The
Yeah.
Bonhomie is real. The relationship
Okay.
between America and India, both on a people-to-people basis, and at this time, the leaders get along very well.
Okay.
So let's proceed.
Okay, Subhash Garg, you said that no favors. Just once again, Padma, I come to you right after. You said no favors have been done. These aren't even reciprocal tariffs. And John Lakshmi makes the point that, listen, every country in it for their own economy. Who cares? Shore up your economy, and automatically the answers will come. Your response?
Please see, America is a big manufacturing nation. I think we tend to forget in this entire rhetoric that somebody is ripping us off. America produces 17% of the global manufacturing. It's not small. We produce 2.5% to 3%. Right. So that is one thing. Second, I think I agree with Mr. Mohan Kumar that the protection which we have built around us, whether it's in the agriculture or whether it's in the industrial areas, actually is not serving us. Look at anything you like, the automobiles or agriculture produce, for that matter, electronics, nothing is actually serving us. Now it's a Tesla produced here, a Tesla produced there, cost almost the same, because everywhere the manufacturing is highly automated now. Labor has ceased to be an advantage. So we should get out of that mindset of thinking that these tariffs protect us. But that is not going to help you much. Even if you reduce the tariffs to zero for American goods, as Vietnam has done it, as many other countries have done, the ask which Trump has is not that the tariffs will go away. I think the simple question to ask is, I think which Vietnam is asking them now, that I have zero tariff on American goods. What can you export to me? Right. Similarly, India, what you will export to us? There is no spare capacity in America to manufacture and export. They will have to rebuild something which they want to export. And rebuilding manufacturing in America is an impossible thing. So I don't think on the good side or merchandise side, America can export and close the trade deficit. What can happen is something like this, that since these tariffs will lead to very high cost of goods imported into America, the American buyers will stop buying from the world. That is one thing which is going to happen, and that might achieve what Trump is trying to achieve, that your difference in trade deficit or the trade deficit goes away. This is like killing yourself or spiting yourself or cutting your nose to set something right. I think he is embarking on a path which is destructive for America.
So this is interesting. You think Trump is cutting his nose to basically spite himself. He is embarking on a self-destructive path, Padma, and then Ambassador Mohan Kumar. John says, okay, well, how do you care if it doesn't hit you badly?
Well, I just want to point out that the point may be relevant at this stage, but all larger countries try to protect their own markets and industry by imposing tariffs. Now, what does India do? And I bring this up because Prime Minister Modi is going to Sri Lanka and he's going to be there tomorrow. A case in point is Sri Lanka. While the Sri Lankan market is flooded primarily with Indian consumer products, you hardly ever see consumer products manufactured either in Sri Lanka or in Bangladesh or anywhere else in India, for instance. And consumer products are only a small example. So since we produce all these items, this is where this protectionism, which both Mr. Garg and Mr. Kumar and even I have mentioned before, comes in. We have zealously guarded and protected our manufacturing sector. And especially, and those sectors which are public sector undertakings, by imposing really heavy import duties, restrictions on the number of goods that some countries are allowed to send to us at all. Like in Sri Lanka, for instance, an analyst was saying that the number of goods that Sri Lanka can export to India are numbered, to the extent that if a pair of socks is exported to India, each sock counts as a separate item. And this was told in an interview by the chairman of the Sri Lankan, Indo-Sri Lankan, one of their commerce chambers. So I think, that we seem paranoid about giving also our consumer choices by allowing imports at reasonable prices from any country. We've not done that. And our industry has continued to rest smug and complacent because of this near market monopoly, except for very high end customers who can afford to buy, say, European or US products despite heavy taxes, heavy excise duties, and other add ons,
Let
which
me
all go into the state's pockets. So our quality and our R&D it has never been given an opportunity to improve because of this complacence. So that is why I feel that this
yeah.
protectionism must go, and the tariffs can't be such a bad thing. It might give us an opportunity to turn lemons not even into lemonade but to champagne.
Okay, lemons into champagne is a delightful, delectable thought. But Ambassador Dr. Mohan Kumar, I want to argue this for 1 minute from the other side. There is such a thing as economic imperialism, some would argue, and no force in the world represents that better than China. So when we look at our own markets, it's one thing to be fighting the Chinese in Galwan, in Eastern Ladakh, in the high Himalayas. But we as Indians are confronted with Chinese goods now dominating many of our markets and actually shutting down many of our small industries. And there has been a lot of push and pull, including within this government, with the Swadeshi Jagran Manch, for example, an RSS affiliate. It's very against these policies. There have been other calls at other times saying when you have military problems with China, why are your markets still open for them? I think the question or the elephant in the room is, where's China? China is, of course, saying this is terrible, take it back. China's got a higher rate of tariffs. But there's also an expectation, because Trump is a businessman, that down the road, Trump could cut a deal with the Chinese. And where I slightly disagree with what Padma said is not because I believe in protectionism, but because complete domination of your markets does lead to kind of geopolitical influence. We can't be naive about that, Ambassador.
So my own assessment is we are at a very, very interesting stage in geopolitics when we haven't been able to see Trump's cards vis-a-vis China. Trump has revealed his cards vis-a-vis Russia, vis-a-vis Europe, and vis-a-vis the Western Hemisphere. That's clear. But I don't know what he's going to do vis-a-vis China. And until Trump makes up his mind vis-a-vis China, I think India wants to keep its options open. I've used the term multiple strategic hedging, which is every country is hedging against everybody else. The recent thaw in the relationship between China and India, by the way, this was initiated by China, not by India. China is no fool, you know that. But that's because China doesn't know what Trump will do to itself. I mean, they are just also playing for time. So I think you're going to see this situation play out. My worry, I would pick up on one point you made, Barkha, and I think that's a very valid one. If Chinese goods find themselves blocked in the US and Europe for a variety of reasons, they will find their way to India. And that worries the hell out of me. I know the Ministry of Commerce well. I'm much retired now, so I think I can stick my neck out. We simply don't have the resources to actually impose anti-dumping duties, countervail duties, and stop Chinese goods. That worries the hell out of me. So you have a point when you say that we have this problem. But then on the other hand, the weaponization of trade has been happening for some time. It's not just Mr. Trump who has started this. This has been going on for a while. He has just taken it to a whole new level. That's all.
Yeah.
So I would conclude by saying that it's a waiting game that everybody is playing, actually.
Yeah, but Padma, briefly before I come to John on China, Ambassador says that we don't have the resources to sort of impose anti-dumping restrictions on China, and if China decides to turn, to flood our markets even further or deeper than they have, I mean, that's not good news. So to John's point, that what Trump does with country A doesn't necessarily impact us. The world is interconnected, some might argue.
Barkha, China was always India's largest trading partner. It fell off that map briefly, and since 2024, China is back to being India's largest trading partner. So, to an extent, that is already happening. Whether that is due to American tariffs or whether that's due to something else, I think it is more due to the pragmatism. I think you might have heard External Affairs Minister Jaishankar speak recently. His utterances were quite frank on greater and more pragmatic engagement with China. Now, this is a good and sensible move, and it will likely ease the pressure off, on India, and enable it also to continue to strike its own largely independent course, say in the Indo-Pacific, as Ambassador Kumar says, till such a point in time when we are able to really, discern where President Trump stands on China, and
Yeah.
so I feel that these U.S. opportunities are these US tariffs, I'm sorry, are an opportunity, even in respect to India and China.
Okay.
In respect, given that both countries have been targeted and hit quite hard, some might say, by US tariffs. And really, and a very last point, to be fair to Trump, and as Ambassador Kumar says, global politics in recent decades have long shed any idealism that they may have once had, and they have come to be purely hinged on give and take, barter,
Yeah.
exchange of favors, and this is another form of trade. I mean, and quite frankly, even the woke vision of a perfect world where the rich allow the poor to get richer and take a back seat out of sheer philanthropy, this is a philosophy which is still spouted by left liberal governments around the world, which are themselves struggling to
Okay.
contain all kinds of other problems.
Let's
So
bring in.
yeah.
Sorry, I'm just running short of time, so let's bring in
Yeah.
John and then give the closing word to Subhash Garg. John Lakshmi, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's too much preoccupation with international trade, especially in the minds of Indians. India has a very large economy. It has unfulfilled needs. America has only 330 million people. We have surplus capacity to produce everything we can think of. India has unmet needs of 1.4 billion people. It can grow its economy independent of international trade. It has vast human resources. It has housing shortage. It has shortage of schools. It has shortage of water facilities. India can build its economy without worrying so much about international trade and its role in international, especially trade in goods. India already has a good position in the services trade, and that's good. You can build on it. You amassed $3.5 trillion of foreign exchange reserves, and India is not really able to use it. Same thing is true with China. They're sitting at $5 trillion of foreign exchange reserves. For what? Got to grow.
Okay. Subhash Garg, let me end by asking you this. Something that's an opportunity and something that concerns you at this point.
See, we have to take into account the fact. The fact is that it's not a bilateral issue. America, India is not the issue. The issue is all of the world, because America is trying to reset its relationship with all of the world. So I don't think we can bilaterally deal with this issue and sort it out. We should think from how we, from global perspective, reset our trade relations. In the emerging economies of the world now, I see in times to come, next 10, 20, 25 years, the global tariffs will actually go away. World has become a single manufacturing entity now with global value chains, etc. Nobody is producing a product which is end in itself. And that world which is coming in will be a world which is without tariffs. So what Trump has started by doing, exactly reverse of that will probably be the outcome at the end, and we should be prepared for that.
Well, one thing is for sure, I think there are uncertain times ahead, whether filled with opportunity or turmoil that will eventually lead to opportunity, we don't know. Subhash Garg is a prophecy for the world where tariffs should be or could be irrelevant. That's not the phase of the world that we're in right now. And as Ambassador Kumar said, let's see where the negotiations finally settle. There could be some industries that benefit and some that are hit. Volatile situation. That's all I'll say is the bottom line for this evening. Thank you so much, John Lakshmi, Padma Rao, Ambassador Dr. Mohan Kumar, Subhash Garg. It's been a pleasure to our audience. Thank you. See you tomorrow. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work.
If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Vote Her Story and support independent, robust journalism.